Welcome, everyone. My name is Chris Harsky. I'm one of the consultants with the CART Consortia for the ARPDC, and we will be looking at pattern blocks from the lens of fractions. So this is just our overview video, and it will be helpful for you to go through this. It's short, just to get some background information and perhaps answer some questions that you might have about the blocks themselves. And then we'll go to the hands-on opportunities for that as well. So I'd like to begin first with our land acknowledgement. As we are going across the province, we acknowledge that we are meeting from across Alberta on Treaty 6, 7, and 8 territories. And we honor and acknowledge all of the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples who have lived, traveled, and gathered on these lands for thousands of years. We acknowledge that these lands are traditional meeting grounds, giving voice to its original peoples and the story of creation in a way that history has forgotten. So with each of the overviews, trying to always support a little bit about some information on whatever manipulative we're using. Remember, our focus here is to learn the hands-on approach. It's not saying that we couldn't do the virtual, but wherever students can actually physically touch and move things, they're more likely to remember. So pattern blocks, you can see them here. They come in all different colors. They also, They also come in, there's different shapes, and they're very consistent in what those shapes are and the measurements of the sides of them so that they can be fit together. So they are for patterning, for measuring, for tiling, for tessellations, but also for fractions. And that's the view that we want to look at today. So a little bit of information about some of the angle measurements that you'll find in here is in the opening descriptor. And where did they come from? We had a gentleman by the name of Edward Prenowitz. I hope I had said that right. In 1963, he was working on an elementary science study and really felt that there was an area in which we needed to develop the hands-on approach linking to the bind so that students would be able to retain information better. It also kind of comes on the heels of when we start to see really where these got sort of coming right into the influence of the classrooms and where we saw some changes. Just a reminder that in 1989, there was an educational reform in mathematics, and not just in Alberta, it was sort of North America wide, even further actually. But really that reform of 1989 kick-started a lot of the hands-on learning that students are seeing today. And pattern blocks was one of them, for sure. And so there was lots of work that was done, lots of resources that were created around each of the manipulatives. And so depending on, how long you've been teaching for a while, you probably have seen these blocks for a while. If you haven't seen them, you might want to go and look because these are generally in most schools already. But if you do need to get a hold of a set of them, I've given you some suggestions of where you can go. They're not by any stretch of the imagination the only ones, but I did try to find as many as I could that are the common places that people would go. And just to tell you what was in there, because with pattern blocks, you can also get magnetic ones for the whiteboard. So that's great for teaching, and I love them. There's also, you can get them in plastic and wood. If you can get them in wood, they're a little bit better for sure. But I mean, plastic is definitely better than not. There's also resource books. You can actually see two binders behind me. And these came out literally when this all hit. So we're talking about the very early 90s that these binders were printed. So there are versions of this right now that are available, but not the exact same ones that I have, but they do exactly the same thing. Really well support you as a teacher for resources in there as lessons. You would never do everything that's in the binder, but there's so much in there for you to choose from that it's really easy to scaffold the children's learning through when you're working with the pattern blocks, fractions, whatever notion is that you're working on, whether it's tiling, those types of things. So again, if these have been in your school for a while, I would venture a guess. There's very few schools that don't have one of these or two of these or three of these binders. They were written for primary, then there was one for sort of grades, I don't know, 5 to 6, 4 to 6. Then there's one for 5 to 8. So you just kind of have to look around. They might be sitting on a shelf someplace where you have manipulatives and people aren't using them, and it's just sitting there and waiting for you to grab it. The next pieces that have come out now since the fraction blocks, because they are well used, pattern blocks, fraction blocks, depends on what it is you're using for. That's how we change the names. So if I'm looking at them from a fraction perspective, they have been exceptionally well used. And so now there's some newer pieces that come out that work with them. Okay, they're not sort of just standalones. They are meant that students already have worked with the original tiles, and they understand how they work, and they understand the relationships between each of them. And that's an important word, relationships. And so now we've come out with DESI blocks. And these are wonderful because they really fill in the gaps and holes for a few of our fractions that we aren't able to articulate when we just use the standard set. So, and this is really kicks it up a notch. So this would really be for Div 2, so grades 4 up. We wouldn't take a grade K to 3 student into a DESI block. They just need to really master the other ones first. Great thinking skills in these. Where could I do these online? So remember, I always put it in red. Physical manipulation is really our goal. So go look in your schools first to see what you have. You can always partner kids up. They don't all have to have their own pile right in front of them. It's nice if they do, but they don't have to have. They can talk it out together and figure out what they're going to do. But there's a number of different places that you can go. Some of them offer a little bit more than others. So I've tried to highlight them. I'm not saying again that these are the only ones, but they were the ones that are most common and right now offer sort of the biggest options around those pattern blocks for fractions, because that's our focus right now is for fractions. And so the Math Learning Center, you've got both pattern blocks and you've got some additional blocks. I'm talking a little bit about those DESI blocks. You've also got templates for children to build on. So when they're first just learning the different ones, just having a picture where they have to find the different colors to put them on top of those templates, they provide some of those for you for free. Mathagon is great. They have all kinds, but the only thing you have to be a little bit cautious of there is initially when you pull out the fraction blocks, they're not the standard colors that you're seeing everywhere else. You can change them though, so they can become those standard colors. And it's not a big deal because it's not the color per se, but it's just that when we're teaching, there's a standard color combination that people typically use when we're teaching the students. So all your resources will be based on those. So you just need to flip the colors into those and then you're good to go. There's lots of tutorials and lesson plans in there as well. Cool Math for Kids also has pattern blocks, the basic ones, and then they also have a built-in protractor. So if you wanted them to measure their angles and doing the geometry components of it, that would be a place to go that the other ones didn't have those options. Braining Camp offers a pretty in-depth one as well. Much like Mathagon, you've got lots of opportunities there to grab the originals. You've also got opportunities for the DESI blocks. And they have a grid that sits in the background, which is sometimes really helpful for the students to visualize pieces that might fit in to answer the questions that we're asking them. And they too also offer the free tutorials. Okay, so we are going to now move to fraction blocks or fraction learning with pattern blocks. If you have the pattern blocks and you're going to do the hands-on with me right away, please have them in front of you so that you can do it with me. I deliberately pause the video in there so I can build whatever I'm asking you in between and then come back with it built so that we can kind of use that as a starting point. So just have them on hand. That would be really, really good. Maybe a piece of paper and a pencil would be helpful as well, because that will give you a chance to write down some of the questions. There are some pieces in here as well, such as 1A, you'll see. We had to reshoot some of our videos, technical issues. We'll just not worry about that right now. But when I went to redo it, I forgot to do division. So you're going to have a really short one right after the hands-on, also a hands-on, but it's just 2 questions in division. I just didn't want you to think I forgot about it. And then there'll be another one after that on DESI blocks as well. So that one might not get recorded right away because the priority is to get everybody going with part 1 right now. All right, thanks very much. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out to one of your local consortia personnel, or if I can answer a question for you, I have my email there. Thanks very much, everyone.